Hello and welcome to the Football 365 Isolation Show. I'm your host, Mark Smith, and I got good news for you. The return of the prodigal daughter is taking place. It's Sarah Winterburn, editor-in-chief of football365.com. Sarah Winterburn, how are you?
Oh, I'm very well. I'm very happy to see you, Mark. I'm back.
You're back.
No more studying. There's all this scratching. I'm back.
You're back. Football's back. Everyone's happy.
Back. I must point out to fans of Matt Stead, and I'm sure there are many, he will be back, but you've got me this week.
Well, you know, I'm happy with that. Matt Stead's fantastic, and we'll have more of a rotation going forward. Let's crack on. Winners and losers. Now, the winners this week. I've sort of got two here, but let's concentrate mainly on Manchester United, Sarah. Mm-hmm. They've been great since the restart. I've not seen you since then, but particularly this last week, they were outstanding. Brighton away and then Bournemouth at home. Tell me, why are they our winners for this week?
I mean, I'm going to put it into the context of playing two teams which aren't great. Brighton are obviously better than Bournemouth, but Bournemouth are pretty terrible. Yes. And to concede twice against them was poor in itself. I mean, if you're going to get battered 4-1 by Newcastle, you know, that you're already in that place, aren't you? Where I'm not going to be massively impressed with what Man United did. But it's more about the overall picture, isn't it? You said since the restart, it's happened before the restart, didn't it? Right? You know, we've had this form ever since Bruno Fernandes came in, and now they've been strengthened further by Paul Pogba.
I was wondering how long it'd take you to talk about Bruno Fernandes. You're in love with this man.
How can you resist? He's like he has clearly changed things, hasn't he? And obviously there's the faith in Mason Greenwood makes a massive difference as well. I mean, the step up from Daniel James to Mason Greenwood is ridiculous. Yes. You know, that front four does look great. And actually the one that looks the most vulnerable is probably Rashford, who isn't playing brilliantly. But you know, Martial is at last kind of looking like that kind of player more often than not, rather than the other way around. Greenwood looks electric. Fernandes, you know, like I said, a real driving force. Pogba looks great since he come back, a little bit more withdrawn on Saturday. Not much of a blockbuster performance, but we don't need that from Pogba.
But also more of a France World Cup performance.
What you don't want from Pogba is that thing of there's a blockbuster 1 in 6 and then disappears. You know, you're much better having 3 or 4 7 out of 10s and then the odd 8 or 9 out of 10. But you know, just that consistency, and he has played very, very well since he's been back. And that front five, shall we say, looks great. I mean, you know, if they can keep that. I mean, there's a lot of fuss being made about, they're keeping with this team because, you know, this is such an amazing team. Well, they don't have a lot beyond that, let's be honest. I mean, we saw in that FA Cup game with Norwich, it wasn't great at all. So this idea that they don't need Jadon Sancho or they don't need someone else, I think is an absolute, I think it's a misnomer. I think it's a red herring. I think what they do
once you get past that starting trio up front, I mean, you're all of a sudden you're looking at Lingard or Mata as well.
You're straight down into Igalo, Mata, James, and there is, you know, those players have all had their moments, but that is a drop from there. You know, personally, I don't think Dan James is any better than 200 different championship winners, but he you know, you're going straight to players like that, and so I think that front four, yes, it's brilliant, but it does need someone else as well. It needs another player. You know, if they can get Jadon Sancho for decent money, and by decent money, I don't mean the ridiculous talk of £50 million there was last week. No. But they can get him for 80, 90 million.
A realistic amount is 90.
A realistic amount is to get it under 100, but 80, 90, 80 million with add-ons to take it to 100, maybe something like that. But if he's available for that kind of price, I'd take it. You know, likes of Kai Havertz possibly, or I mean, I'm not convinced that Jack Grealish is a great fit for this Man United side. I must say.
No, can we talk about that for a second? Because Grealish seems to be someone who is linked very, very heavily. Although that has gone off the boil a little bit since Pogba's come back and looked settled. But Grealish, I don't know where he plays in this side. I mean, if Pogba was to go, I sort of get it. But as it is, for a start, he's not this number 8 that people seem to be talking about at all. He comes from the left and he drifts around and he might play as a 10 maybe. And he tracks back a bit, but he's not your guy for that. And I just don't think spending 75 million quid, which is probably what it would take to get him, for a guy who will just pad out the squad, is a good idea. Plus, he's not the sort of character that will want to sit on the bench.
No.
And rightly so, he's...
To me, that Man United side, once again, is based on, quick counter-attacking, quick thinking, quick feet, everything going, that and the Man United side in full flight, that's what you imagine, isn't it? That the speed of attack, that kind of, 1-2, one touch, two touch. So, Grealish is more of a sort of almost like a Mata type character that's kind of, he wants a bit more time. He looks great on the ball, but is that really what Man United are going towards? I don't think so. It's like, they're going for that sort of pace and power sort of combination, not the sort of... I think Grealish is great in a team that's a poor team. He's the best player in that team. Get him the ball, give him some time, get him the ball.
Yeah.
But that Man United side are not going to think, right, let's get the ball to Jack Grealish. That would be nonsense.
No, that's right. I would say, though, that I agree with you about the how good they are on the counter and their sort of quick, I guess, sort of power football is what I'd call it. But having now seen Fernandes for a few weeks, or a couple of months, they are so much more capable now of breaking down a team that is happy to defend deep. And against Bournemouth, I think once they went a goal down, a year ago, I'm not sure they even win that game. But now they're just constantly putting teams on the back foot, constant pressure. Fernandes will try 30 passes and a lot of them won't find their target. But the 2 or 3 that do lead directly to good chances. And that's the difference between this team and the team a year ago.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is there was a lot of talk about why they didn't go for Fernandes last summer, and a part of the talk of that was, his pass, his ball retention skills, his pass completion rates aren't great. There was, whether that was just a narrative to distract you from the fact that they just didn't want to pay the money at that point is another thing. But this talk of him not being quite that, that whether they're worried that he wouldn't be able to keep the ball as much in the Premier League. Do you know what? It doesn't matter.
Well, De Bruyne's stats.
If you're trying 20 passes.
Yeah.
Oh, if you're trying 20 passes, but 3 of them, and if you're De Bruyne, 8 of them create something, then that's what you need. Exactly. You can't just always have that sort of the metric of the kind of not every team's made like that, and certainly Man United aren't going to be made like that. They don't look like that kind of team.
And I think it's really important to have. Yeah, it's important to have a playmaker that is not afraid of losing the ball, and I think that United over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, particularly under Jose, you felt like they would get an absolute bollocking at half time if they lost the ball. And so no one dared try anything. And now you've got players in there who are, not scared of failure. And that is really important. Let's move on to quickly, we'll keep this one quick. It's a second winner of the week, which is Southampton. And actually there's quite a nice little link there, because I'd say that Southampton and United have got managers who have They've retained the confidence of the board, and they've come through a very sticky patch. And Southampton against Man City at the weekend were absolutely phenomenal. And it's implausible to me that this is the same team that lost 9-0 at home to Leicester only, 6 months ago?
I think you absolutely have to applaud the board on that, because any team that loses 9-0, everyone says, how does the manager keep his job out of that? But they obviously saw the bigger picture. And they saw that behind the scenes, this was a team that absolutely believed in him. There was never any sense that a 9-0 was a throwing away of, chucking the boots away. They didn't want to play for him. It was just, it was an anomaly. It was a team can win 9-0. That didn't make that Leicester team absolutely astonishing, the best, the Premier League title winners, did it? It didn't make Southampton the worst team in the division either. No. It was things went wrong, it spiralled, etc., etc. But no, that Southampton looks great. They work so hard. The way that they press and counter press is phenomenal. They look like the Liverpool side has changed in the last 2 or 3 years. It's moved away from that sort of ultra pressing game into this kind of more pragmatic game of more long balls from the fullbacks and all that stuff. We can talk about that another time. But this Southampton team looks like the incarnation of, the first incarnation of Klopp's Liverpool, of that kind of just chasing the ball down. The goal, the finish from Jay Adams was absolutely brilliant. But that didn't come by accident. That comes by thinking, right, we know where the goalkeeper's going to put this ball. We know that defence struggles in those situations. We are going to swarm them. And they got that goal out of that. And then they fought and fought and fought and, did all the dirty things that come with trying to keep a 1-0 lead against a team as good as Man City. But they do look very, very good. And, you might look at the table and think, oh, well, they're only mid-table, it's whatever. But this is a team that, if you lose 9-0, then you end up mid-table. That's astonishing. That's brilliant. This has been a great season for Southampton.
Oh, by the way, not just 9-0, but 9-0 at home on Sky on a Friday night, so everyone could witness an awful murder. That squad and that team has, I think, in times like this, in football terms, that is a traumatic experience, and they've all come through it together, and they've looked into each other's eyes, and they've seen each other's souls, and they've realised either we can stick together and come through this and be better, or we're going to collapse. And House and Hootle in charge has made sure the first one.
About Southampton, or are you talking about your marriage?
This is my own stuff. Yeah, don't worry about that. Right, let's move on to losers, and actually, it's the other side of the same coin. Because for me, Man City have got to be in losers this week. Now, here's an interesting stat: Man City had the same amount of shots on goal against Southampton in that 1-0 loss as Leicester did in the 9-0 win. Now, is that just one of those things that happens, or is it indicative of some real issues at Man City?
I think it's a combination of both, isn't it? It is one of those things, in the same way that we can sort of say that, the 9-0 was an anomaly. The 1-0 sometimes is an anomaly as well. I mean, you can't watch that game and think, Man City did dominate. Man City did have a lot of the ball. They did have a lot of chances. They also, it's a bit after the Lord Mayor show, isn't it? Because on Thursday we saw the best of Man City, where they absolutely took Liverpool apart. They were brilliant. They destroyed them. And after that, what you've beaten the champions 4-0. Where do you go from now? Well, geographically, you go to Southampton. But so you also go to Southampton. You got Southampton tired. You got Southampton with several of those players were he didn't take the full backs, did he? And no. One thing we have seen since the restart is Benjamin Mendy looks like the player that we thought City were buying 2 years ago. Whatever, he looks great. What a great player he's been since it's all come back again. Take him out of the team and bring in Zinchenko, that weakens that back four massively. Is this we can see this isn't a great Man City side because they've lost the title by 20 points as it stands. It could be more, 23 points or whatever. But is it sort of, does it need dismantling and building again? I don't think so. I think there are a few players in there. Obviously they should have bought a centre half last summer. I mean, I think that's pretty damn obvious. They probably have left themselves in a position now where they need to buy two. Because obviously John Stones is no longer wanted. Otamendi is not up to the task. Fernandinho is in his mid-30s now, and he is still playing out of position. That basically leaves you with Aymeric Laporte as your one centre half that's reliable. Eric Garcia's coming through. You want two more centre halves, don't you? You've got, they're trying to replace.
I think there's more than that. I think they need three. I think that
we've had you question. Edison's had a terrible season. I mean, I'm not saying you should replace Edison, but there's got to be some rethink there about, all this wonderful praise about, look at him, he plays like an outfield player. He doesn't play like a goalkeeper enough of the time for me. He seemed to have believed his own press over the last couple of years, and he's almost playing as if he is an outfield player. Well, actually, start catching the ball, mate. Start moving in the right direction.
Do your primary job first.
Yeah, there are problems with that squad. There are problems, and they obviously have got the long-term problem of that spine. They can't. They have to replace Sergio Aguero at some point. Gabriel Jesus is not the answer in that position. He's not clinical enough at all. He'll only score a few goals just because Man City makes so many chances.
Yeah.
But he's nowhere near as good as Aguero. Whether Rodri is a long-term replacement for Fernandinho, I'm not sure. We've only seen a year of him.
Yeah, in his defence, this is his first year, and I mean, a teammate of his, David Silva, in his first year was getting pelters from all over the place. So I'm not saying Rodri is as good as David Silva. They play different positions, but I'm just saying they're not in the same bracket. But if it can happen to Silva, it can happen to Rodri. I think Man City's issue is what you say, is the spine. I look at centre-back. I think Laporte's a good player, but I think you need someone alongside him. I think the likes of Gundogan he's a good player, but I don't think he's anything special.
He's not a great player.
No, he's not. I think it's really important to see someone like Phil Foden step up, but that's a lot of pressure for a young guy, although I do think he can handle it. De Bruyne goes without saying, one of the best players in the world. And then you're right up front. I mean, this is a lot of money that they have to spend, and I'm not sure, given what Man City are going through off the field at the moment, and given that the world economy is collapsing, I'm not sure now is a good time to be doing it. I'm not sure they can carry out as much surgery on that team as they need in one off season. So really, I think
it probably needs 200 or 300 million. Really, in logically, or it certainly would have been at last year's prices. Now, whether that would take that kind of money this summer, I'm not entirely sure. But you're looking at it and thinking you need a striker, you need probably one more winger. You lost Leroy Sané. We saw, Raheem Sterling start like a train this season, but then obviously when it became, he had to play every single game because there was no Sané.
Yes,
so Sterling was playing every game. He wore himself out. By January, he looked a shadow of the same player. So you need more there. You probably need another right back. They've obviously tried to replace Kyle Walker with João Cancelo. Hasn't really worked. He's never looked settled, and all the talk is of him leaving already. I think Mendy probably does solve the left back problem. I think if you can keep him fit, he looks
I don't
great.
think he's been as good as you do. I think he's been good going forwards. I think he's been a bit ropey at the back. I don't think he's a great defender.
I think that's part of the. I think that is highlighted by the lack of centre halves in there, or the lack of there's a time when being a City fullback, you didn't have to be brilliant defensively because you had two good centre halves, and you also had Fernandinho as a centre. A really good defensive midfielder knows exactly what the fullback is covering every fullback run. Now I'm not sure Rodri is quite to that level yet of Fernandinho, and I don't subscribe to this notion that Liverpool are going to do this again. I don't think Liverpool can't hit sort of 90 odd points again. We saw from City that kind of form is only really it's possible over 2 seasons possibly, but over 3, I don't think that.
Well, let's wait and see, because I've got a feeling.
I think Liverpool are going to drop, and maybe City won't. Maybe City only need to gain 10 points, and Liverpool will drop 10 points. I do think there won't be that gap next season. No way.
No. Well, you mentioned Liverpool there. It gives me a chance to get into our mailbox for this week. Now, mailbox this week comes from a man. And this is entitled...
A man. Just a man.
Just a man. Just a man.
Can we not use his name? Or?
Very vague. A man. A man's his name. A-M-A-N.
It's pretty much always a man. Very, very rarely a woman.
A man says, how is it that every time I watch Firmino play, he looks like a really, really bad player in a really, really good team? But whenever Liverpool play without him, they are just really, really bad. Is it as good as assured that they win every time he comes on or starts? Does he do anything? No. Assists? No. Goals? No. But yet, Liverpool seem to be lost every time he isn't playing. That's madness, isn't it? Says a man. Yes, a man. I think it is madness. Firmino, talk to me about him. Give me about 30 seconds on Firmino if you can. Why is he so important to this team?
It is madness. I mean, Firmino's a funny one, isn't he? He's been so underappreciated for so long that now he's probably overappreciated. And we all go on about how you don't really understand. If you don't understand football, if you don't understand what Roberto Firmino does. Clearly, what he does. What he clearly does is work incredibly well with Salah and Mane. Would you put Firmino in a different team, he probably wouldn't look that great. And you're right. There are times when Mo Salah looks like he can't control the football as well. It's about that combination between the three of them, isn't it? And you wonder, you take one of them out, they immediately look so much poorer. I mean, that's the massive challenge for Klopp now, isn't it? How do these are all players who are 28, 29, coming up. How is he going? Does he replace all 3 of them? Because that's the only way. Because the 3 of them work so well together that sort of doing it piecemeal is going to be really difficult. Obviously, that's a nonsense. But for me, he's an odd one. He looks awkward sometimes. He doesn't look. He's a classic non-scoring striker. But it really bloody works.
Yeah, he's sort of victim to the new generation of sort of stat-obsessed people. How many assists has he got? How many goals has he got? Well, don't worry about it. Look at Giroud in the World Cup. I think Firmino's brilliant.
My favourite strikers are usually non-scoring strikers. So.
Well, it's a good job.
Long-standing love for Emil Heskey, so
Oh, have you? Well, that could be a separate show
entirely. I don't care about Michael Owen. That's I never liked Michael Owen. I liked Emil Heskey. All his work off the ball. Love it.
Yeah, no, that's true. He was certainly a football player. Okay, right. That's all we've got time for. We've overran massively, Sarah, because you're back. We got all excited. We'll be back next week. I'm not sure if it's you or Matt Stead, but someone will be back with me next week.
Lottery, mate.
Yeah, lottery. Do get in touch with the show. If you've got anything to say, you can email us at theeditor@football365.com. Sarah Winterburn, thanks very much for being here today.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Ta-ra.